Lessons for a Happy Marriage, Part 2. And if you didn't look at Part 1, it's not too late. You can go back, or you could just start with this. My name is Paul Friedman. I founded the Marriage Foundation. I also wrote a book way back in 2003 called Lessons for a Happy Marriage, but I'm going to try and help you just with these videos. And in the first part, we talked about the fact that you got married for one major reason, and that was to be happier. And just beneath that, to be happier all the time, to have ever-expanding happiness over the years of your marriage. We also talked about the fact that you are a soul, and that if you align your mind, which is a possession, with your soul, and you act accordingly, which is all about love and all about infusing happiness into your marriage, that you can't miss. Now, the problem that comes up is that we are victims of our mind until we take over. Most of us don't even realize that we're supposed to control our minds. And good proof of that is the fact that they teach anger management instead of anger eradication. Now, at the Marriage Foundation, where we help people who have minor problems and major problems, the one who have really major problems where their marriage is simply heading for divorce, we always recommend the courses. And I begin the courses with how to control your mind, how to watch your mind, how to be aware of your mind so that it doesn't betray you. And why would it betray you? It betrays you because it's driven by the body's drive to survive until you finally have had enough and you go, no, I, the soul, I am in charge. And I'm not going to allow my automatic habitual reactions to decide my future. What do I mean by that? There's this little thing called karma, cause and effect. It works like math. If I am holding a pencil here and I let it go, I have done certain actions and there's going to be a reaction. The reaction is gravity's going to take over and the pencil's going to fall and hit the ground. Now, if it's a glass, chances are that glass is going to break when it hits the ground, and the pieces are going to shatter in God knows how many directions, and so you can't put it back together again. And so I never begin with, so what's the problem? Tell me about it. I don't do that. I never did it with my live clients. I don't do it when I get the phone calls. And I certainly don't do it in the courses. I start with, let's learn about controlling our mind. Let's understand what we are so that we can participate in our marriage in a way that satisfies the highest, most guiding principle of marriage, which is happiness, continually increasing happiness based on love. Love is the biggest principle of marriage. Isn't that why you got married? Didn't you go, oh, I love her so much. Oh, I love him so much. I want to be married. And then what happens? Your marriage starts falling apart. So in my book, I go into great detail about the killers of marriage. And I'm just going to touch on them a little bit in this video because it's important to know. I used to be a divorce mediator. And so my first approach to helping marriages was very simplistic. It was a list of do's and don'ts. I didn't understand marriage when I started. And so I thought having this binary choice of should I do this or should I not do that would really help. And it does. You need to know where the guardrails are. So let's begin with the killers of marriage. What do you think is the biggest killer of marriage? Do you know that most people think it's financial problems or in-laws or cheating? And none of those are. Those are symptoms. Now, the biggest killer of marriage I call overfamiliarity. What does that mean? It's like when you were first dating. Think about it. Think about it. You were so careful. You would never say anything that might be offensive. You would never say anything that might indicate that you have a difference of opinion. You were very careful, very considerate. It wasn't phony. You had an agenda of winning the heart of this person. Nothing wrong with that. So you didn't expose everything. Nothing wrong with that. But over time, what you did, which is natural to do, it's wrong, ultimately, you became too familiar. You would test something. You would say, let's see, I'm going to ask this question to see if they're a Republican or a Democrat, if you're political. And then I'm going to ask, are you a vegetarian? How do you feel about saving the whales? How do you feel about a clean house? How do you feel about this? And as you get to know each other, you start sensing, what can I say, even though it's different, that will be accepted and won't kick me out of the relationship. All that's good. It's how you learn about one another. But then you become overfamiliar. You start farting, if you're a man, in front of her. Burping. You don't put on as much makeup. You don't watch your language. You don't, more importantly and most importantly, you don't treat them with the level of respect that you should have for the person with whom you want to spend the rest of your life. You may yell at one another. You may bicker, argue. And people, well, what's wrong with arguing? Everything is wrong with arguing. Discussion is fine. Arguing's not. Which leads to the second killer of marriage. Okay, the first killer of marriage is overfamiliarity, where you have taken your spouse for granted. And they feel that. They feel that. And then they take you for granted. And pretty soon it turns into a cycle of taking each other for granted, abusing one another, which became the title of my second book, Breaking the Cycle. How do you stop doing that? Well, you stop it all at once. But the second killer that I alluded to is poor communication skills. Now, you don't have to learn how to communicate like a politician. You don't have to learn how to communicate like a salesman. You don't have to learn how to communicate like a rabbi. Those are different venues, aren't they? Each of those venues require different forms of communication. You're in a marital venue. You need to learn how to communicate like a married person. Now, I can't do the whole chapter in this video, but basically, you're communicating with a person whom you wish to uplift, whom you wish to express love and devotion towards. Aren't those the two biggies? Express love and devotion and uplift. Why would you ever want anything else? Why would you ever want to correct your spouse? Why would you want to discipline your spouse? Criticize your spouse? Beat them in an argument? Why would you ever do that? It's the opposite of why you got married. You got married for happiness through love. Let's take a look at that. Is criticism a form of love? Or are compliments a form of love? Is discipline a form of love with your spouse? I'm not talking about your children. Or is acknowledgement and understanding a form of love? So communication. Poor communication is the second killer of marriages, but it's far outweighed by the first, which is overfamiliarity. Then we get into the third killer of marriages, which you should really think about whether this is part of your marriage. And that's a business mentality towards your marriage and your partner. And what do I mean by that? What is a business mentality? A business mentality is, I'll give you something, you give me something. And we want fairness. I hate that word fairness for marriage. It can't possibly exist. There's no such thing as fair in marriage, ever, never. You might hit it the way a clock hits a number during a 24-hour period. It's accidental, at best. But to make that part of the marriage makes your marriage a deal. You cannot have this foundation of love with the fourth killer of marriage, which is expectation. So I don't have expectation in my books as a killer of marriage, but it's very powerful because it is the opposite of love. You cannot be expressing love and harbor expectations at the same time. It's just opposite directions. So this is a big lesson for a happy marriage, is eliminating the killers, being watchful. And don't just watch it in terms of, oh, I won't say that. Watch it in your head. Watch it in your mind. Is your mind going there? Because if your mind is going there, it's eventually going to come out of your mouth or come through your behavior. So you got to catch it in the form of a thought. And when you catch it in the form of a thought, and you've learned to control your habitual thoughts and your instinctive reactions, then you can get rid of this set of killers. So this is a very valuable lesson, very valuable. And I see we're going through time like it doesn't exist anymore. So I'm going to have to let you know there's going to be a part 3 here for lessons for a happy marriage. And in the meantime, if you're not able to get to it right away, blessings to you, blessings to your spouse, and blessings to your family. And subscribe. You know, there's a lot of great material that I want to share with you. It's good stuff. And thank you.